Hi guys, my name is Miss Yu and you're welcome to the I Am Learning Hub. Now today we are here to talk about a very interesting concept, and that is the concept of multiplication. Now in mathematics, there are just four basic operations. We have addition, we have subtraction, division, and multiplication. These are the four basic operations in mathematics. Now, multiplication is so important because there are a lot of other things that you do outside multiplication that rely on your knowledge of multiplication. For example, converting percentage, converting from decimals to percentage, working with percentage. There's so many things. Division also relies on your knowledge of multiplication. Factors, multiples, HCF, LCF. There's so many things that rely on how well you know your multiplication. So today we're going to be looking at that interesting concept. Now, what is multiplication? Multiplication is just repeated addition. Now, when I say 2 times 3, that means 2 3 times. So I can say 2, 2, 2, 2 in 3 places means 2 times 3, which would give me 6. Now, if I add 2 3 times, I would arrive at 6. So multiplication is repeated addition. That's what it is. But think about this. If I was to say 9 times 7, which is 9 7 times, or 9 in 7 places, how am I going to be counting all of those numbers? That's a very, very big number to count. And there's a possibility that I might make a mistake. So it is just easier to learn the multiplication table instead of relying on your addition to solve multiplication problems. And this is where it's important to learn your multiplication table. I'm saying this because a lot of you think there are shortcuts and there are ways around learning multiplication table. Yes, there are, but trust me, they are longer. It's easier to learn your multiplication table than have to count all those things or have to count 9 7 times. Just know that 9 times 7 is 63. It's easier to just know it than to have to count 9 7 times every time you have to do that multiplication problem. So now we're going to be looking at the link between multiplication and division. Now, remember I told you that to solve division problems, sometimes you have to rely on your knowledge of multiplication. Now, I'm here to show you that link between your division and multiplication. So I have a number, say 2 times 3, this is equal to 6. Now, 2 times 3 is the same thing as 3 times 2, which will give me 6. Now look at these three numbers. They are always linked. 3, 2, and 6 are always linked. So that means that if I say 6 divided by 2, it is going to be the missing number in the link, which is 3. And if I say 6 divided by 3, is going to be the other number in the link, which is 2. So this is a very, very easy and fast way to link your multiplication or to use your knowledge of multiplication to solve division problems. Now let's look at another one. If I have 9 times 7 is equal to 63. Now anywhere I see 9, 7, the answer is always 63. Or wherever I see 63 and 7, the answer is going to be 9. If I see 63 and 9, the answer is definitely going to be 7. Now what do I mean? 63 divided by 9 is, exactly, you guessed it, 7. Now, what do you think 63 divided by 7 will be? Exactly, it's going to be 9. So there's a very, very strong link between your knowledge of multiplication and division. That is why it is always, always advisable to know your multiplication. All right, so let's look at some of the rules of multiplication. Now, there are certain rules that guide multiplication, whatever the numbers are. Now, these are the rules of multiplication. Any number multiplied by 1 is the number. So that means 7 times 1 is 7. It also means that if that number is 120, as long as it's multiplied by 1, the answer is that number. So any number multiplied by 1 is that number. And that is the first rule of multiplication. The next rule of multiplication is that any number multiplied by 0 is 0. So no matter how big the number is or how small the number is, if it is multiplied by 0, the answer is always going to be 0. So 469 times 0 is exactly 0. 1,420,005 times 0 is exactly 0. So no matter how big the number is or how small the number is, once you are multiplying that number by 0, the answer is always going to be 0. Now that's the second rule of multiplication. Okay, so we're going to be going through the multiplication table, and we would be exploring some of the tricks and some of the tips and tricks when multiplying by certain numbers. So let's start with 2, the 2 times table. 2 times table is similar to you skip counting in 2. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. That's basically your 2 times table. It just means skip counting in 2. Now, the next multiplication table that is super easy is your 5 times table. For your 5 times table, you're basically skip counting in 5s. So you have 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. Now, say, for example, you're asked a question like 5 times 8, and you are not quick to remember what that answer is, and you say, oh, let me count to get the answer. Then you just keep counting 5s instead of adding 5 to 5 and then adding another 5 until you get to 8 times. You just keep counting 5s 8 times. So you hold up your 8 fingers and then you go 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. 8 times 5 is 40. So basically skip counting in 5s. So I have another question. For example, I say, what is 5 times 9? So you hold up your 9 fingers and you skip counting 5s. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, and 45. So 9 times 5 is 45. Now that's the trick to your 5 times table. Now another thing to note with your 5 times table is all the multiples of 5s always either end with a 5 or with a 0. So if you have a number like 22, it is not a multiple of 5. So all the multiples of 5 either end with a 5 or a 0. Now the next multiplication table that we're going to be looking at, it's just pretty interesting, is the 9 times table. Now there is a trick to solving the 9 times table, and I'll show you what it is. So I have 9 times 1, 9 times 2, 9 times 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So to do your 9 times table, watch carefully. Now this trick is super cool, but note that it only works up until 9 times 10. You're going to have to figure out 9 times 11 and 12 on your own. I'm so sorry. But let me show you this interesting trick. So we start with 0. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And then we do the same thing, but starting from the bottom this time. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Pretty cool, isn't it? I know. So this is the trick to doing your 9 times table all the way to 9 times 10. Right? Great. So now the next multiplication table that we're going to be looking at is your 10 times table. Now the 10 times table is one of the easiest times table that there is. So you do 10 times 1 is 10. So you're basically skip counting in 10s. So it's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. I mean, these are things that you learn mostly before you're 5. So 10 times 1 is 10, 10 times 2 is 20, times 3 is 30. So basically, you just keep adding 10 or you skip counts in 10. That's your 10 times table, and it's pretty easy. Now, there's another trick to your 11 times table. Are you ready? Okay. Now let me show you. Now this trick for your 11 times table only works for certain numbers. But it is a trick worth knowing because you never know when you will need this trick. So if I was going to multiply 11 by, say, 11 by two numbers, so 11 times 12, what I would do is I would write my 12, add both of them, and that would be my answer in the middle. So the answer is 132. So let's try this again. Now this works for your 11 times 11, like 2-digit by 2-digit multiplication in your 11 times table. So 11 times 10. So you bring down your 10, 1 and 0. You add both. 0 plus 10, and 1 plus 0 is 1. And your answer is 110. So let's try this with another number. Say 11 times 14. So you put your 1 and your 4, and then you add both. 1 plus 4 is 5. Now that's your 11 times table. Now the truth with your multiplication table is that many of these numbers overlap. So for example, if I learn my 1 to my 5 times table, I'm good. I know a lot of my multiplication tables. In short, I can know 11 times 5. I can know what 12 times 5 is. But I haven't yet gotten to exploring the 11 and the 12 times table. So instead of looking at the multiplication table as a chore, look at it as something that's pretty interesting, like an adventure that you should go on. And an adventure that when you have gone through, math becomes super easy and interesting. I hope you enjoyed that, because I did.
I am learning with I am Learning Hub.